Hi, welcome to the webinar 15, Top Tier Game Design, a deep dive into the process. I will be your host today. My name is Alexis Argyriou. I've been in the game industry for about 13 years, working on big AAA studios, big AAA projects, but not only. So this is my journey. Maybe you recognize a few of those studios here. But I started actually in an indie studio before moving to co-development and then finally being a lead artist, lead designer and creative director at those big game companies. I've been working also as support for the publishing teams and the investment teams at Tencent, where I was responsible for the creative direction for all the studios that they acquired in Europe and in Canada. So lately, I've been building my consulting agency, which supports investors and venture capital to invest in games. And I'm supporting them with the creative direction and production expertise. So we'll talk about game design first and what it is not. So in AAA games, it's very different from mobile or hyper casual. So for us, a game designer is not a product lead or a producer or a project manager. Those are separate roles. They're also not programmers or artists. In fact, they work together within what we call the development team, the production team. So we'll have the game designers, the artists, and the programmers working alongside each other. And then they will have leads, they will have directors. And on top of the project, it's usually two people, the creative director and the executive producer. The creative director responsible for the vision, the alignment of the vision, and the executive producer responsible for the budget, the project management, organization, and tasks. So what is the difference between a game designer, an artist, and a programmer? Of course, we're going to talk more about the game designer, so I'm going to leave that for later. But an artist is basically responsible for the visual representation of the game itself on the screen. And the programmer is for everything that is under the hood to make sure that the game is optimized, that it runs on every console, that is bug-free. So the game designer's role is really finding the fun. It's what makes a game unique is the interactivity of the medium. It's not a movie, it's not music, it's not a book. But if you put a movie with interaction, that's a video game. If you have a music that is interactive, that's a video game. And if you have an interactive book, that's a visual novel, and that's also a video game. So really, the game designer's responsibility is finding emotions, creating emotions through those interactions. And because a video game is on a duration, it's on a timeline, a period of time. It's about finding the right emotions and the right interactions at the right time. So creating this graph of finding the fun is emotions over time. But a game designer is not a real title per se in AAA games. A game designer, just like an artist or a programmer, is divided in many subcategories. You will have the combat designer, you will have system designers, level designers, UI, UX designer, just like you would have concept art or 3D art in the art department. In very, very large games, so this is an example from Horizon Zero Dawn, but it also works for Assassin's Creed, it works for God of War, it works for all the biggest AAA games. We usually divide the design team in three large categories. You would call it core design or gameplay design, which would be the player systems, the combat, if you have combat, and everything that the player will interact with directly in the interface. Then you have the world design or level design, which would be everything from designing the levels themselves, but also designing what happens in those levels, the encounters, the puzzles, those kind of things. And then you have quest design or narrative design, which is everything that will talk to the player or that the player will follow throughout the journey. So we kind of like divide it in those three broad categories, but it's important that each designer understand how the entire department is working, because you never work alone. And we'll talk a bit more about that later. What the game designer is really responsible for is the pre-production. Pre-production is a crucial part of the processes. So this part is going to talk mostly about the game design processes, which is in the pre-production phase. And you can't start a pre-production without knowing what game you're actually building. And this very, very first stage is the ideation, the game mode for the game. So what is a game mode exactly? You know what is a genre. You have FPS, RPG, all those kind of things. But within an FPS, you will have a lot of different type of games. A battle royale is not the same as a deathmatch, right? You have different game modes, and your game will most likely be centered around a single game mode. It will be capture the flag or extraction, prop hunt, any of those. But finding what is the game mode is crucial. You can't come up with a game mode later. It will be disaster for the team. And the second thing is the theme. So this is usually decided way before any game designer joined the team. It's decided by people who are funding the game, by the creative director. And this combination of genre or game mode plus the theme is what is going to make the game unique. So we're always trying to find a unique game mode for a unique theme. That's our way to differentiate ourselves on the market, but also to make something that everybody will understand. If you're making a cyberpunk game, everybody knows what is cyberpunk. They have some expectations from this theme. And if you're making a battle royale in cyberpunk mode, you have two things that players understand, but has not been done before. So you have kind of like a new market for your players. Once you have that, you start thinking about your pillars, your game pillars, or the vision for the project. So this is something that the game designers work on heavily. If you don't understand the pillars as a game designer, you will build something that is too different from what the creative direction wanted, and you're going to end up building another game than what you're supposed to build. So the game pillars are supposed to answer the game design questions. What is the game about? What emotions should be felt? And what is unique in this game? My favorite pillars are from Horizon Zero Dawn. I think they really nailed this exercise of building game pillars. The first one, the first keyword is explore. And it's about exploring the majestic wilderness growing on the mysterious ruins of a post-apocalyptic, far future America where machines have become the dominant life form. So just with the keyword explore, you wouldn't really understand what kind of exploration you're doing. But with this full sentence, you now know that it's about an environment that is natural, where you will have pockets of man-made objects, those ruins. You would have machines that are going to be something, probably a threat or something that you're going to encounter there. And those informations are useful not just for the game design team, but also for the art team, for the sound team, for the VFX team, for everybody. Everyone understands what kind of exploration we're having. The second keyword, the second pillar, the first keyword is about experience. And this is very important. It's those emotions that I was talking about earlier. So experience the compelling stories, rich cultures, and memorable characters of a tribal mankind and save them from the brink of extinction. There's a lot of everything. Everything is important there. Nothing is to throw away. So you have different cultures, which is useful for the art team that knows that they will need to build characters from different factions, different outfits. You will need to save them, save people. So it's not a game where you're going to run around and shoot everything that moves. You're there to save people. It's a very important emotion that you have to convey in the marketing. You have to convey to the players. You have to convey somewhere throughout the entire game. And this idea of a brink of extinction means you have an impending doom. You almost like have a timer in the game that tells you that if you're not acting, the world is going to end, and you're there to save this world. So just with this one sentence, you already have the entire tone of the game. And then the final pillar is the action word. The action verb here is hunt. Hunt lethal, awe-inspiring machines with your speed, agility, and smarts, using weapons, gears, and traps crafted from their salvaged parts. Again, a lot of very important things here. It's not going to be about strength. It's not about being the most powerful. It's about being the smartest, the fastest, the most agile. And that's a very different kind of emotional response to fighting in the game. You have a lot of different ways to fight. And this game is going to be about this agility and this speed. Very different from any other game in the open world settings. So with those three pillars, we have a complete picture of what the game is going to eventually be like. And it's not just good for the game designers, it's good for the art team and for the programming and for VFX and for everybody in the production department. And also important for the marketing and for the players later. They will understand what the game is with just those three sentences. So as a game designer, it's very important that you are able to write those kind of almost stories, little tidbits of stories. Other games did it differently. Path of Exile went with a very traditional idea of pillars. They have 5 pillars, and those are almost only about what makes them unique as a video game. You'll have visceral action combat, randomly generated levels and items, secure online economy, and deep character customization. This doesn't really tell you anything about the visuals of the game, doesn't really tell you anything about the VFX or the sound or anything like that. It does help the programmers, knowing that you will have so many randomly generated things, but it doesn't give you a complete picture of what the game is going to be like. Destiny went with very, very specific design pillars. So those pillars are only for the design team. They're not going to be for the artists, they're not going to be for the programmers, those are really just for the designers. God of War went with a completely different direction. God of War assumes that the team already knows the franchise. They already know the previous God of Wars. And those pillars are only about what is new compared to the previous games. So the pillar of the combat, for example, will talk about new mythical creatures, new mythical weapons. They will talk about the father and son relationship, which you didn't have in the previous game, that they want to create this narrative pillar. And exploration. The previous game was very linear, and this one is going to be about an open world to explore. All those are valid, just different ways to create pillars. And Paradox did something even more different. They have pillars for the entire studio, for the entire publishing part of their studio. They will have pillars for every game that comes into their franchises. So Paradox, if you don't know, they make City Skylines, Stellaris, Battletech, and ground strategy games like Crusader Kings, Heart of Iron, and Europa Universalis. And all those games would fit into those 6 pillars that they have for the entire games that they build or that they buy, that they purchase for their own studios. The next step, once you have your pillar and your vision is more clear, is to do a lot of research. So every game designer must make their own research. It's very, very important that they understand themselves what is going to be their target audience. So we talk about target demographics a lot, especially outside games. But I think for video games, it doesn't work that well. It's not that useful. If you say the target demographic is going to be male, age 18 to 35, you're not going to be very specific. A lot of players are in this range, but not all of them will be interested in your game. So I tend to disregard the target demographics usually. What I'm very interested in is the target audience and target market. So target audience will be kind of like the broad category of players. So FPS gamers, for example, so it's a broad category. And then I go more specific. I think about the target market. And for this, I'm trying to find something very unique, something that's that exists, that is real, like players who love Fortnite but got bored and want something more realistic, more hardcore. And that's an actual type of player that you can go out and interview them. You can understand why they got bored of Fortnite, what they want in a more realistic or more hardcore game. So this is a real thing that you can actually go out and interview. If you say male 18 to 35, you will have thousands of different answers if you ask thousands of different people. And it's not that useful in the end. So audience, very important. Market, even more important. Then you have the core game mechanics. The core game mechanics are more complicated than it sounds like. For me, a good core game mechanic is a verb. So you have, in this case, explore, hunt, loot, craft, ride, meet, and quest. Those are excellent core game mechanics. And here I put them in a circle where one comes after the other. That's very simple. But what's really important to understand is that the verbs themselves are 50% of the equation, and the other 50% is how those verbs connect with each other. What is the relation between the different core game mechanics? And this is as important as the mechanics themselves. So again, if we look at Horizon Zero Dawn, the core game loop is not that simple, but it's the same verbs. So you will go from hunting to looting, and the riding comes after, questing. It doesn't come immediately. So all those things are in relationship, and this relationship is as important as the verbs themselves. Progression is basically taking this core loop and trying to understand how can we make the player go through this loop multiple times. So in this example, the core game loop expands. You start the game, you only have explore, quest, loot, and meet. You don't have yet the hunting, you don't have the you don't have other things like questing and crafting, for example. You don't have crafting here. And that's an option. You can add new elements to your core game loop as the player progresses through the game. You can also do it through the world itself. So you're doing this core game loop in one location, and then you're doing the same core game loop but in a different place. Maybe it's a bit harder. Maybe you have different type of enemies. Maybe you have different type of landscape that makes the combat easier or harder. Another type of progression that works very, very well for literally the entire duration of the game industry is give players experience. And once they reach a certain threshold of experience, they level up. And this little number of level is going to be a progression system that players want to be the highest level. So it's a very simple progression system, but it's a very it's a progression system that worked for decades, and we know it works. Another system is the unlocks. So you play through the game, do a few game loops, and once you have a certain amount of points, or once you do certain things, you unlock new things that allow you to be better at your core game loop. So the core game loop doesn't change. In this case, Battlefield, you still spawn, shoot, and win or lose. But you'll be able to shoot more efficiently, to travel more efficiently. And when you take this progression and you take it for the entire duration of the game, you will realize that players will get better at it. You will give them better equipment. Their abilities will just get better because of working hard on your game. So the game will become too easy. So you want to increase the challenge at every time they replay the core game loop. But now that you increase the challenge, they get frustrated. So you have to find this perfect balance between frustration and boredom, and to be exactly in the middle. And we call that to keep the player in the flow, this flow channel. And you want to make sure that your game works for the lowest skilled players and the most skilled players, because not every player have the same abilities. So this is extremely important for the player journey. Once you have all those elements, those core game elements, this player journey, the progression systems, you will have to make a breakdown of this. And this is extremely difficult. It requires you to think about every single detail. And usually you will have the entire game design team that's going to be working on this for months. So you take, for example, just the crafting system. Crafting system, what is it made of? It's made of recipes, which might have a level, which might have different complexity. You'll have ingredients. You'll have locations for this crafting system. So you will need to connect it with the exploration system. So you need to talk to someone else to figure out how you can implementing your crafting loot into their exploration or their loot systems. You will have menus, literally the interface for the crafting to happen on. So you will need to talk with UI designers. You will need to talk with artists. And all those elements, once they're broken down to their smallest atomic level, that allow you to give a little time estimate on those, a little budget. And you will need to talk with artists, programmers to figure out how each feature is going to impact the full budget and the timeline of the project. Once everybody did this due diligence on every single feature, then the producer knows how big is going to be the game and how expensive it's going to be. And that's the moment where you will probably have to cut down or push some things for later, for DLCs or stuff like that. So this communication is extremely important, and most games that fail in production fail because of communication. We'll talk a bit about this later. But a game designer will have to talk with artists, with programmers, project manager, and marketing. They will have to talk with a lot of different people. These communication skills are crucial. If you're an introvert, you will have to work on your communication abilities to be able to involve everyone in your feature design. Once you have all those elements and you talk to everybody and you know how much everything costs to build, you can start estimating the quantity of how many things you want to have in the game. So maybe you talk with an artist and a sound designer, and you know that making one single recipe costs about 2 days of work. If you want 245 recipes, that's almost 500 days of work, just for this part of the crafting system. So you have to discuss this with your lead, with the project managers, to identify what are the most important things for this particular game. If the crafting system ends up being a very, very small part of the game but cost a lot, you will have to cut things down. And that's difficult, but that's necessary. So that's something that designers need to understand very early on while they're working on the project. Last but not least, the monetization. So monetization for AAA games is usually predefined. It's not something we have a lot of power upon. We don't have a lot of freedom in what kind of things we want to do, because the game already costs $60, $70. Those are expensive games, so we can't afford to add too many microtransactions on top of that. But if you're doing a free-to-play game or a more casual or mid-core game, you can take and choose different monetization systems and see how you can fit them into your game systems. Which game systems are worth adding monetization to? Which ones don't affect the gameplay too much, that players still feel that they want to spend money on, but that will not limit the players that are not spending enough. So we have all those processes now. We can think about how all those are connected together, and the best way for that is to look at case studies. Very quickly, a few case studies. So one of the main problems we have in the game industry is an unclear vision, a blurry vision. So that was the case for this game, Anthem. Anthem is a massive project, extremely expensive, one of the most expensive games in the game industry, and it was in development for 8 years. One of the main problems, if not the main problem, was the constantly changing directions. And developers came out after releasing the project and said that they actually had no idea what game they were making. And they were even surprised when they saw the E3 demo. They were like, oh, that's the game we're making. And that's because the game designers didn't do their job properly at explaining what the game is and to involve every department into the production. Or the creative director didn't manage to convey this vision to its own game designers. As I was saying, the communication is paramount. It's one of the most important things for a game designer. And you will have to communicate with everyone in the industry and outside the industry as well. So players are crucial because they're the ones buying and playing the game. In the case of 7 Days to Die, the players wanted the game to go in one direction, and the developers refused to listen to them and continue making the game in another direction. So if you look at their forums on Steam, you will see that there is a lot of miscommunication between players and developers about what the game is actually about. In the case of Lawbreakers, it was the other way around. The developers were talking to the players, but they were talking in a way that was not kind, not nice. They were insulting players, and the communication was so bad that players just plainly refused to play the game anymore. So communication goes both ways. It goes from the player to the developer and developer to the player. And that's true for any kind of communication. It's always a double-sided communication. With marketing, so this is a game I worked on, and the marketing team wanted to do a game that was more exciting, more grand, with explosions and stuff like that. But the development team wanted to make a game that was more explorative, more contemplative. And that led to a lot of clashes between marketing and development. And when the trailers were released, there was a clear difference between the gameplay trailers and the marketing trailers. And the players were very confused what this game is actually about. Another game I worked on, Cygnus Enterprise, there was a huge miscommunication between the artists and the design. The designers wanted to make a game that was very, very, bleak, very straightforward, no decorations, really just you're on an alien planet and you're building a space base. But the artists wanted to build something that was beautiful. They wanted to build something with a lot of, colors and vegetation. So that led to a very, very strong miscommunication. On Ghost Recon, we had programmers that wanted to build a game that was, very efficient, very optimized. But the design team wanted to have the control over how things are built. And they didn't get the control because programmers were building tools in a certain way that was not how the designers wanted to use those tools. So huge miscommunication, and the game cost way more money than it should have. And on the case of Skull and Bones, that is made in Southeast Asia and Singapore, that was a miscommunication between publisher and developer. developers wanted to build a game in one way and publisher wanted the game to be something else. So this miscommunication created a lot of delays, a lot of frustration. A lot of directors ended up leaving the project because they couldn't build the game that they wanted to build. And that created delays, and the game is delayed again and hasn't been released yet. And finally, scope. Scope, I think, is the easiest to understand, is when you do this breaking down of the features, but you don't do it thoroughly enough, or you underestimate how things should be done and how much they should cost. So scoping is such an important part of the development, but can only be accurately done after years and years and years of experience. Tools are constantly changing, teams are changing, expectations are changing. So scoping is always a very, very difficult thing to do. And in Star Citizen, they basically got infinite money, which kind of like skews how much you think the game should cost and how features should be done. And this ended up kind of like a curse, because designing things when you don't care about how much they cost means you don't exactly know how much time it will take to develop them, and you might have some dependencies problem. Something is done but can't be released because it's missing another thing that was pushed for later. So this scoping affects not just the budget but also the time and the time schedule for the game to be released. So my final takeaway here, one is to find your place. You have to understand exactly what kind of designer you are. Where is your strength? What can you do? And what you like to do, and what you don't want to do. I think it's extremely important that you understand that you're going to be a system designer because you like to work on systems. You like to be a world designer because you like to work on environment, which is my case. Second one, you have to establish and communicate the vision. You have to make sure that the vision itself is clear, but you have to make sure it's communicated in a clear manner and that everybody understands the vision. When I'm working as a consultant to help studios, what I do is ask everyone in the team, what is the game you're building? And if I get more than 2 or 3 answers, I know that the game is in trouble and that the vision was not communicated clear enough. Third one, you have to break down each feature properly. You have to make sure that you understand what the feature is about, that you went as deep as possible into the intricacies of this feature. Fourth one, the silos. So in the game industry, we call silos when you're building something without talking to each other. It's part of the communication, but it's also part of how you work. If you don't involve other people, you will not be challenged and everything will be so much easier, right? But if you have to talk with other people and they challenge you, your feature will become much better. You will learn from others, they will give their inputs, and you will not have that many issues in producing it. Siloing is the bane of game development. So if you're a project manager, try to bring everybody together, have features with a designer, an artist, and a programmer working together on it to break those silos. And last one, test with your audience. You think you understand your market, but you don't until you really test your game with this market. Their feedback is going to be more important than any leads or director's feedback. You have to make a game for an audience, so it's better if the audience tests early your features. I'm almost out of time, so thank you very much for keeping up with me. I hope everything was clear. I couldn't go in depth into every single feature, so if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. I'm also available by emails, so you can write me here at Alexis@thebureau Ltd. And I will be in Hanoi from January, so if you want to meet me, if you want to have a beer or a coffee with me, just send me an email and we'll make this happen. Thank you so much.